Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive on a fish that's, well, let's face it, on a lot of aquarists' wish lists, the pike cichlid.
Ah, yeah, the Pike
You
Cichlid.
sent us a pretty comprehensive care guide, and we're going to unpack it, see if these unique predators could be a good fit for, well, your aquarium.
Pike Cichlids, they're a fascinating bunch. I bet it's those sleek, torpedo-like bodies and the colors, the striking colors that first, caught your eye.
Yeah, for sure. Some of them, like the Saxatilis pike, have just incredible patterns.
Oh, absolutely. But it's more than just looks that makes these fish special.
Right. It sounds like their personality is just as captivating as their appearance.
Oh, for sure. Imagine this. Okay, you've got this densely planted tank, maybe some rocky overhang, some driftwood, a few roots kind of snaking through, and suddenly, boom, a flash of movement. Your pike cichlid, it just bursts from its hiding spot, snatches a smaller fish, and then disappears back into the shadows. I mean, it's like a tiny slice of the Amazon rainforest right there in your living room.
Wow, that does sound incredible. But that kind of, I don't know, ambush predator behavior,
Yeah.
that probably means they aren't the best fit for a community tank.
Right. You're spot on. Their natural habitat, it plays a huge role in how they act in captivity. Pike cichlids, they come from the rivers and streams of South America, from Venezuela all the way down to Argentina. And these aren't exactly like calm waters. They're used to currents, a dynamic environment.
So replicating that habitat is key to keeping them like happy and healthy.
Exactly. Think of it this way. If you were suddenly, plucked from your comfy home and just plopped into a completely foreign environment, you'd be stressed too.
Yeah, for sure.
These fish need space to move, places to hide, and, water flow that mimics their natural habitat.
Okay, I'm starting to get a feel for just how specialized their care is.
It is, and that's why, we often recommend pike cichlids for more experienced aquarists. You need to be prepared to meet their specific needs, and that starts with understanding their natural habitat.
Gotcha. So let's get into the specifics. First up, tank size. I have a feeling these, active predators need a decent amount of space.
You'd be absolutely right. Even for the smallest varieties, like the dwarf pike cichlid, we're talking a minimum of a 55-gallon tank.
Wow, that's the minimum.
Yes. And for larger species, you might even need a 75 or a 100-gallon tank. Remember, these aren't just big fish. They need their own, territory. Cramped quarters, it's a recipe for stress, aggression, and ultimately unhappy fish.
So it's not just about aesthetics, it's about like their well-being.
Precisely. Now let's talk substrate. Sand, it's often the best choice for pike cichlids. Not only is it gentle on their bellies, when they're foraging along the bottom, but some even like to dig, which sand allows for. Fine gravel can work too, as long as it's not sharp or too large.
Okay, so nothing that could injure them as they, explore their environment.
Right.
What about decorations?
Decorations, they aren't just about making the tank look pretty. They're essential for recreating that natural habitat. Rocks, driftwood, plants, they all play a crucial role.
Okay, let's break those down. Rocks, those would provide caves and hiding spots, right?
Exactly. And they can help, define territories, which is super important for these fish. Driftwood, it adds that authentic Amazonian feel. Plus, some pikes even use it to, spawn. And then there are plants. Choose hardy varieties like Java fern and Anubias. Ones that can handle, a bit of rough housing because pike cichlids, well, they can be, shall we say, enthusiastic diggers.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I can imagine. I bet those plants also help break up sight lines and reduce aggression.
Exactly. You're getting the hang of this. It's all about replicating the complexity of their natural environment.
Okay, I'm ready to move on to filtration. I've heard pike cichlids are messy eaters, so I'm guessing filtration is super important.
It is. Think of it this way. You've got these big, carnivorous fish generating a lot of waste. Strong filtration is absolutely essential to keep the water clean and healthy.
Oh.
We usually recommend canister filters or high-capacity hang-on-back filters, to handle the load.
Okay, so something powerful.
Yes.
What about water flow? Should we be aiming for a gentle current or something a little more, I don't know, robust?
Remember, these fish come from rivers and streams, so they're used to, a bit of current. A moderate water flow is ideal. Adjustable filters or power heads, those give you the flexibility to fine-tune the flow to your pike cichlid's liking.
All right, making a note of that. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of water parameters.
Okay, we need to make sure the water chemistry matches their tropical origins. Temperature is first. Aim for a consistent 75-82 degrees Fahrenheit. A good heater, it's a must-have to maintain that stable warmth.
Makes sense. No sudden temperature drops for these guys. What about pH?
Pike cichlids, they prefer slightly acidic to neutral water, ideally between 6.5 and 7.5 on the pH scale. And just like temperature, stability is key.
So no big swings in pH.
Got it.
Now on to water hardness.
Okay, soft to moderately hard water is best for these fish, somewhere between 4 and 10 DGH. And this is where your trusty water test kit comes in. Regular testing, it helps you keep an eye on these parameters and catch any potential problems, before they become serious.
So a test kit is an aquarist's best friend.
It really is, especially when dealing with, a fish as specific as the pike cichlid.
Absolutely. And while we're on the topic of creating the perfect environment, let's talk lighting.
Okay, lighting.
What kind of lighting do they prefer?
Pike cichlids actually prefer things a bit subdued. Remember, they're ambush predators. Bright light can make them feel like exposed and stressed.
So we're going for a more natural, dimly lit Amazonian vibe?
Exactly. Dimmable LEDs are a great option here. You can adjust the brightness to create a more natural look while still being able to see your fish in all their, beauty.
Perfect. Now, let's move on to everyone's favorite topic. Food. I'm guessing their diet is a bit more specialized than your average, flake-loving fish.
You could say that. Pike cichlids are carnivores through and through. In the wild, their diet consists, primarily of smaller fish, insects, crustaceans.
Yeah.
So we need to replicate that in captivity.
So no vegetarian options for these guys.
Definitely not. They need a diet rich in protein to thrive. Live foods are a great option, but you need to be very careful about, disease.
Right, that's where frozen foods come in.
Exactly. Frozen bloodworms, brine shrimp, krill, all excellent choices. And you can supplement with, high-quality carnivore pellets for a balanced diet.
So it's all about providing variety and making sure they get, the nutrients they need. What about feeding frequency?
Once a day is usually sufficient for adults, while juveniles might need to be fed, twice a day to support their growth. But here's the crucial part: portion control.
Right. Overfeeding can lead to all sorts of problems, especially with a messy eater like the pike cichlid.
You got it. It can pollute the water, even lead to, health problems for the fish. Now, we've talked a lot about their needs, but what about their company?
Yeah. Can anything actually live with these guys without, becoming a snack?
Finding suitable tank mates for pike cichlids, it's definitely a challenge. We need to think about, size, speed, temperament.
So we need tank mates that are large enough not to be seen as food,
Yeah.
fast enough to escape if things get, heated,
Right.
and maybe even a bit assertive themselves.
You're catching on quickly. And even with all that, a spacious tank, plenty of hiding spots, that's essential.
Yeah, I'm starting to understand why keeping pike cichlids is recommended for more experienced aquarists. There are a lot of factors to consider.
It is. But with the right knowledge and preparation, creating a thriving pike cichlid tank can be, a truly rewarding experience.
Well, I feel like we've covered a ton of information already, but I know there's still more to explore.
There is. We need to talk about, potential health challenges they face, and of course that tricky question of tank mates. But before we dive into those topics, maybe it's a good time to, pause for now.
That sounds like a good plan. We've definitely given everyone a lot to think about. Join us in part 2, where we'll delve deeper into the, nuances of pike cichlid care and companionship. Welcome back, everyone. We're continuing our deep dive into, the captivating world of pike cichlids.
We covered a lot in part 1, about their natural habitat and how important it is to replicate those conditions in your aquarium. So let's build on that. Remember those South American rivers and streams? They're not, just open water.
Right. You mentioned all those roots and rocky formations and stuff they have to navigate in the wild.
Exactly. We need to think beyond just basic decorations. We're aiming for complexity. Pike cichlids, they need a mix of open swimming areas, but also densely packed zones, caves, overhangs, all those nooks and crannies that provide, visual barriers and a sense of security.
So a multi-layered aquascape is what we're after.
You got it. Imagine a base layer of rocks and driftwood, creating tunnels and hiding spots, and then add in hardy plants like java fern and anubias, anchored to those rosin wood to create visual breaks. You can even incorporate floating plants for additional cover.
This is starting to sound like a really engaging aquascaping project.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, they'd appreciate all those hiding spots, especially given their territorial nature.
Absolutely. The more complex and enriching the environment, the more comfortable and secure your pike cichlids will feel, which, in turn can help minimize aggression and stress. Remember, these are visual hunters, right?
Mhm.
So if they can't constantly see each other, they're less likely to feel threatened.
Right, right. Makes a lot of sense. Now let's shift gears and talk about their diet. We touched on this briefly in part one, but I think it's worth, diving deeper.
Absolutely. Remember, these fish are obligate carnivores. Their digestive systems are, designed to process protein, not plant matter. So a diet rich in animal-based foods is crucial for their health and well-being.
So live foods are a must.
They can be a great option. Think feeder fish or insects. Watching your pike cichlid, stalk and ambush live prey, that can be a truly captivating experience. However, you have to be incredibly careful about, the source of your live foods. We want to stimulate their natural instincts, not introduce, diseases or parasites into your tank.
Right. So sourcing from like reputable suppliers or ideally
Yeah.
breeding your own is the way to go.
Exactly. And always quarantine live foods, for a period before introducing them to your pike cichlids, just to be safe.
Good point. Now, what about frozen foods? Those seem like a more, I don't know, convenient and less risky option.
You're right. Frozen foods offer a, fantastic alternative. Bloodworms, brine shrimp, krill, mysis shrimp. You have a wide variety to choose from, and they provide those essential nutrients without the risks, associated with live foods.
Okay, so frozen foods are a good staple, but we mentioned high-quality carnivore pellets as well.
Exactly. Pellets can provide a balanced mix of nutrients, but look for those specifically formulated for, carnivorous cichlids. They should be high in protein, low in fillers, and a tip, opt for sinking pellets. Pike cichlids, they tend to feed, near the bottom of the tank, so those floating pellets might just go to waste.
Gotcha. So mixing it up with live, frozen, and high-quality pellets is the key to like a happy and healthy pike cichlid. But even with the best food, there's always the risk of, overfeeding.
That's right. Overfeeding is a major culprit when it comes to water quality issues. Uneaten food decays and leads to spikes in, harmful substances like ammonia and nitrate.
So portion control is like crucial.
It is. Only feed them what they can consume in a few minutes. And remove any leftovers promptly. Remember, we're aiming for, like, a thriving ecosystem, and that means keeping the water clean and balanced. Now, let's talk tank mates. This is where things can get, tricky with pike cichlids.
Right. We know they're solitary and territorial, not to mention those predatory instincts. So who can actually share a tank with them, without becoming a smack?
It's definitely a challenge, but not impossible. First and foremost, size. Your tank mates, they need to be large enough not to be seen as, prey. We also need to consider temperament.
So no, like timid little tetras or peaceful guppies.
Unfortunately not. They'd be sitting ducks in a pike cichlid tank. We need tank mates that can hold their own, think robust, agile, and maybe even a bit, assertive themselves. But we also don't want to create, a war zone in the tank.
So finding that like balance is key. What are some species that might actually work?
Larger cichlids are often mentioned. Oscars, Jack Dempsey's, green terrors, they're robust, territorial, and, capable of standing up for themselves. But remember, they're also cichlids, so there's always potential for aggression.
Right. So again, a spacious tank with plenty of hiding spots is a must.
Absolutely.
What about catfish? Could those work?
Some catfish species can be, good companions. Those larger bottom-dwelling catfish like Plecostomus or Synodontis, they tend to stay out of the way and aren't perceived as a threat.
But again, size matters, right?
Yeah.
We don't want them becoming a quick snack for our pike cichlid.
Exactly. Now, if you're looking for something a bit more active and, visually appealing, some aquarists have had success with large barbs or silver dollars.
Right, those are like fast-moving, schooling fish. I can see how their speed and agility would make them more, difficult to catch.
Exactly. They're not foolproof options, but they can work in the right conditions. And this is where careful observation comes in. You see, every pike cichlid has a unique personality. So what works well in one tank, it might not work in another.
So like flexibility and being prepared to, adjust your plans are key.
Absolutely. Now, let's shift gears and talk about health concerns. We already touched on common ailments, fin rot, hole in the head disease, and bloat.
But there's one more we should discuss that pike cichlids seem particularly susceptible to bacterial infections.
Right. They have, relatively delicate scales and skin, and they're active fish. So scrapes and injuries, they can happen, creating an entry point for bacteria. Poor water quality just makes things
So
worse.
those, regular water changes and pristine conditions we keep talking about are even more important.
They're crucial. Keep an eye out for, red sores, cloudy eyes, ragged fins, or any, unusual redness or inflammation. Those are telltale signs of a bacterial infection.
So any deviation from their, normal appearance is a red flag, so to speak.
Exactly. And if you do notice these symptoms, act quickly. Isolation, a course of antibiotics, and meticulous water changes are usually the recommended course of action.
But, prevention is always the best medicine.
Absolutely. And quarantining any new fish, before introducing them to the main tank can help prevent the spread of diseases.
Now, we've talked a lot about, the challenges of keeping pike cichlids, but there's also a very rewarding aspect we briefly mentioned, breeding.
It's not for the faint of heart, but breeding these fish can be, incredibly
So
fascinating.
let's talk about that. What do we need to know if we're, considering taking on this challenge?
First off, a separate breeding tank is highly recommended. It allows you to create, the ideal conditions for spawning without interference from other fish. And size still matters. A
Yeah.
55-gallon tank, that's usually sufficient for smaller species, but larger ones might need, a 75-gallon or even larger.
Spacious even for breeding. Okay, what else?
Think about, their natural breeding grounds. They need a complex environment with plenty of hiding spots and territory markers, rocks, caves, driftwood. Those are all, essential.
And water parameters. Do they need anything, specific to encourage spawning?
They prefer soft, slightly acidic water for breeding. Aim for a pH of around 6.5 to 7.0 and a temperature of 78, 82 degrees R, so slightly warmer than their, usual tank temperature. And when it comes to filtration, use something gentle like a, sponge filter to avoid harming the delicate fry.
Okay, so we've got the environment set up. What about pairing? How do we, find compatible mates?
That can be tricky. Pike cichlids are notoriously picky when it comes to choosing partners.
Yeah.
One option is to, start with a group of juveniles and let them pair naturally as they mature.
So that they, sort it out themselves. That seems, less stressful than trying to introduce an adult pair.
It can be, but if you are working with adults, introduce them carefully. Use a divider or a neutral tank to, minimize the risk of conflict. Monitor their interactions closely, looking for, signs of pairing behavior, like fin flaring, chasing,
Mhm.
sort of dancing around each other.
Sounds like a delicate dance indeed. And if things get too heated,
Be prepared to separate them. Now, once a pair is established and the conditions are right, they'll, typically choose a spawning site.
I'm guessing like a flat rock or sheltered area.
You're right. The female will lay her eggs there, and then the real fun begins. Pike cichlids, they're generally, attentive parents. Both the male and female guard and fan the eggs.
And what's the fry hatch?
The parents will usually move them to, a pre-dug pit or another sheltered area for protection.
Yeah.
But raising those fry, that's a whole other challenge.
I can imagine. They must be tiny and, delicate.
Yeah, they are. They require, frequent feedings of small live foods like baby brine, shrimp, or microworms. And pristine water conditions are absolutely essential. Frequent water changes are a must.
So breeding pike cichlids is definitely not a, casual undertaking.
It's not. It requires a lot of knowledge, patience, and dedication. And even then, there's always the possibility of setbacks.
But for those who are prepared for the challenge, it sounds, incredibly rewarding.
It can be. Witnessing the entire life cycle of these fish from spawning to, raising their young, it's a truly fascinating experience. But I think we've covered enough ground for now.
Yeah, we've explored a lot in this part of our deep dive. But there's one more crucial aspect of pike cichlid care that we need to address. Water quality. We've, touched on it throughout our discussion, but it's so important it deserves its own, dedicated segment.
I completely agree. Water quality is, the foundation of a thriving pike cichlid tank. So join us in part 3 as we delve into the, intricacies of maintaining that delicate balance for these captivating fish.
Welcome back, everyone. We're wrapping up our pike cichlid deep dive with, well, a topic that's essential for, any fish keeper, but especially crucial for these sensitive predators. water quality.
Yeah, water quality. We've, touched on it throughout our conversation, but it really deserves its own spotlight. It's not just about aesthetics. It's about creating an environment where your pike cichlids can really thrive.
Exactly. So let's break down what excellent water quality actually means for these fish. We talked about those, tropical temperatures they need.
Right. 75 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit, that's the sweet spot. And consistency is key. Think of it this way. If you were constantly being moved from, like a sauna to a cold shower, you wouldn't feel very good, would you?
Definitely not.
Same for fish. Sudden temperature fluctuations, they can stress them out, weaken their immune system.
So a reliable heater and a good thermometer, those are non-negotiable for a pike cichlid tank.
Absolutely. Now, let's revisit pH. We know pike cichlids prefer, slightly acidic to neutral water, ideally between 6.5 and 7.5.
And just like temperature, stability is super important here. But how do we actually, ensure that the pH stays stable?
Regular water changes, they're your first line of defense, and using a quality buffer can, help maintain that desired pH level. It's also a good idea to, avoid adding anything to the tank that could, drastically alter the pH, like certain types of rocks or driftwood.
Okay, making a note of that. Now, onto water hardness.
For pike cichlids, soft to moderately hard water is best. Aim for somewhere, between 4 and 10 DGH. And of course, a reliable water hardness test kit. That's essential for, monitoring these levels.
All right, so test kits are important for just about everything. Now, for the invisible enemies of a healthy aquarium, ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate. I know these are all bad, but can you remind me, why?
Think of them as the unwanted byproducts of a living ecosystem. Fish waste, uneaten food, they break down, releasing ammonia, which is, highly toxic even in small amounts. Beneficial bacteria then convert that ammonia into nitrite, which is also toxic. And finally, nitrate is converted to nitrate, which is less toxic, but can still cause problems in, high concentrations.
So the goal is to keep ammonia and nitrite at zero and nitrate, as low as possible.
Exactly. That's where, regular water changes and a well-maintained filtration system, that's where they come in.
So filters aren't just for removing those, bits of food and debris.
They do that, but their most important job is hosting those beneficial bacteria, the ones that, break down those harmful substances. Think of your filter like a mini waste treatment plant just working tirelessly behind the scenes.
That's a great analogy. But even the best treatment plant needs, maintenance.
Exactly. Regular filter maintenance is essential. Rinse the filter media in tank water during water changes. Never tap water. That can kill the beneficial bacteria. Just to, remove debris and keep things running smoothly.
Okay, I'm seeing a theme here. Regular maintenance is key to a healthy pike cichlid tank.
You got it. And speaking of maintenance, let's talk about, those all-important water changes.
Yeah, I know our care guide recommends a 20 to 30% water change weekly.
That's a, good starting point.
Oh.
But remember, every tank is unique. Factors like, tank size, the number of fish, their diet, it can all influence how often you need to change the water.
So more fish and more food equals more waste, which could mean more frequent water changes.
Exactly. And while we're on the topic of food, let's revisit, overfeeding.
Right. Those pike cichlids, they are enthusiastic eaters. It can be tempting to give them, a little extra, but I know that's a recipe for trouble.
It is. Overfeeding leads to excess waste, which, fuels those spikes in ammonia and nitrite that we talked about. Remember, portion control is key. Only feed them what they can consume in a few minutes and remove any uneaten food promptly.
Okay, got it. Now, I'm curious, are there any signs that our pike cichlids are trying to tell us the water quality isn't quite right?
Absolutely. Fish are incredibly sensitive to, changes in their environment.
Yeah.
If you're normally, active, pike cichlids become lethargic, hide excessively, or refuse to eat, that could be a sign that something is off with, the water.
So changes in behavior are the first clue.
Often, yes. And keep an eye out for, physical changes too. Any unusual redness, inflammation, or discoloration, on their bodies or fins could signal a problem. Rapid breathing, gasping at the surface, or cloudy eyes, those are also red flags.
So any deviation from their normal, behavior or appearance is a reason to investigate. But what if we do find that the water quality is off? What are the, the steps to take?
First, identify the specific problem, right? Test the water parameters thoroughly to see what's, out of balance. Then you can take steps to correct it.
So if nitrate is high, a large water change might be in order.
Exactly. You might also need to adjust the filtration or even, use a water conditioner to neutralize harmful substances. And remember, it's important to address the root cause of the problem, not just treat the symptoms.
So if, overfeeding is the culprit, we need to adjust our feeding habits, not just, do a water change and call it a day.
Precisely. It's about taking, a holistic approach to water quality management. You're not just following a set of rules. You're becoming like a steward of this delicate living ecosystem.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered just about everything there is to know about, pike cichlids and the crucial role water quality plays in their care.
We've certainly delved deep into their world, from their, captivating predatory nature to their very specific needs. We've explored what makes these fish so fascinating.
And why they're such a, rewarding, albeit challenging, choice for experienced aquarists.
Exactly. So for those of you considering, taking the plunge into the world of pike cichlids, I leave you with this final thought. Observe, learn, and adapt. Every tank, every fish is unique. Be prepared to adjust your approach based on, what you see and learn.
Great advice. The more you learn, the more rewarding, the experience will be. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of pike cichlids.